different backgrounds in the city or downtown. This is our teacher Ingrid. On the left side of the slide, she tells us that it's necessary and beneficial for us to do the integration of four skills and do it collaboratively, so our student can really know something about proposal making that I will mention to you later on in the presentation. And finally, we talk about the First Nations. First Nation means the Aboriginal people in Canada, and we have been to the Museum of Anthropology at UBC, and it's about the indigenous people there. So students can get some interview with the aircraft and the guideman in the museum, so they would know something about the First Nations and their histories. On the left side of the slide, for example, the student would know that the origin of the tribe around Vancouver City is all about the raven. So this is raven, and the raven breeds the human beings. This is raven, yeah. And on the right side of it is the longhouse or totem pole, yeah. So our basic example lesson would be talking about the sky, and there are 4 criteria that I want to talk to you because this is a little bit difficult. And these 4 criteria are provided by the Canadian philosopher Charles Taylor, and when it comes to turn with multicultural issues. First one is authenticity and dignity. When I mention this term to my students, they will feel very confused about it because it's too difficult one. So I'll just always explain to them that this is all about the roots or the origin or the belief system of certain groups. So by doing that kind of explanation, they will understand more about that terms. And secondly, I'll tell them that you should observe how the identity of certain people or certain tribe could be forged. And that kind of concept involves the dialogical rather than monological relationship with ours, which means the interaction with the people or with your enemy or friends, your friends and foes. Okay. And third one is about conflict. Conflict is about the conflict between or confrontation between the individual or collective identities. So students will just watch a movie clip and do some reading of the passage talking by ourselves guide and do some research about extensive reading, and they use the 4 criteria and finally jump to the conclusion that recognition is the mutual respect, is the dream of mutual respect nowadays come true, or is just a cultural survival jurisdically. Okay. And our reading analysis will be done later on, and they will know something about the issue of First Nations. So our topic will be survival of First Nation, and students are second graders. They are not very good at English from ER 60 to 80 by our teaching hours. And our key objective is to develop their language skills or skill integration. They will do it simultaneously and at the same time. And they improve the knowledge of content-related vocabulary and learn something about First Nation and Aboriginal people. And they will develop the academic skill, learn the basic element of multicultural issue, and do the compare contrast. As you already have the worksheet that I gave to you earlier, is worksheet D, page 5, worksheet D, thinking zone. There are 2 framework for them or for their reference to do the compare and contrast, so that it could fill in the key terms or a key concept in a gap. Okay, so they can compare and contrast later on and do the poster making or poster production. And our teaching activities are divided into 3 stages: before teaching, while teaching, and follow up. And before teaching, as I mentioned before, they will just know something about the 4 criteria. And while teaching, they will do some group reading and discussion. In particular, they will do some note-taking. Teacher will just read out loud to them, and they will just take notes and try to differentiate between the main idea and supporting details. And they will know something about language analysis charts they will know that they don't really have to memorize all the word from 1 to 27 or 26. There's a lot of them, right? So the only thing you have to do is just to divide the vocabulary into three areas, so they can memorize the real term that involve them most. Okay. So and finally, they will do some group discussion and conclusion making. And so they will just get some mental map of the First Nation. They will know something about the original people or natives in the United States. For example, in 1830, the people there were uprooted from the eastern coast of the United States to the western coast. Okay. And there in 1890, there is a very notorious Wounded Knee massacre, this heavy killing happening. And they will know something about the Canadian First Nations and what is it, how does it define and what is the definition of First Nations. And they will know something about the Dakota people. Okay, as I will show you during the movie clip. And they will notice how Chief Seattle interact with the white Americans. And finally, their focus would be back to Taiwan, how the Select people in Taiwan interact with the Japanese government in 1930. This is for criteria that I mentioned before. And they get a worksheet here before they watch a movie later. The teacher or instructor would just explain to them how should I go in the trip. They would just watch a TV clip about American experience in the war, and they would just take notes in the blanks and fill in the blanks about the answers. For example, they would just notice how the U.S. government, what is the roots or what is the dignity for the U.S. government, and what is the root for the Lakota people, and what is the root for the Aaron Boy. Aaron Boy is the white photographer in the K lecture. So what is the root for three different personalities? Okay, and the identity that I mentioned before. So this is the basic foundation of the plan. Okay, so I'll just play the movie for you. Sorry.
I'm here today to show my photographs of the Lakota. Now, many of you may have heard of Lakota, or at least the larger group of tribes called the Sioux. The Lakota are one of many tribes who were moved off their land to prisoner of war camps, now called reservations. The Pine Ridge Reservation, the subject of today's slideshow, is located about 75 miles southeast of the Black Hills in South Dakota. It is sometimes referred to as prisoner of war camp number 334, and is where the Lakota now live. Now, if any of you have ever heard of AIM, the American Indian Movement, or of Russell Means, or Leonard Peltier, or of the standoff at Oglala, then you know that Pine Ridge is ground zero for Native issues in the U.S. So I've been asked to talk a little bit today about my relationship with the Lakota, and that's a very difficult one for me, because if you haven't noticed from my skin color, I'm white, and that is a huge barrier on a Native reservation. You'll see a lot of people in my photographs today, and I've become very close with them, and they welcome me like family. They've called me brother and uncle, and invited me again and again over 5 years. But on Pine Ridge, I will always be what is called Washichu. Washichu is a Lakota word that means non-Indian, but another version of this word means the one who takes the best meat for himself. And that's what I want to focus on. The one who takes the best part of the meat. It means greedy. So take a look around this auditorium today. We are at a private school in the American West, sitting in red velvet chairs with money in our pockets. And if we look at our lives, we have indeed taken the best part of the meat. So let's look today at a set of photographs of a people who lost so that we could gain. And know that when you see these people's faces, that these are not just images of the Lakota, They stand for all indigenous people. On this piece of paper is the history the way I learned it from my Lakota friends and family. The following is a timeline of treaties made, treaties broken, and massacres disguised as battles. I'll begin 150 years ago. I still have to ask you the question, how should you feel about the statistics of today? What is the connection between these images of suffering and the history that I just read to you? And how much of this history do you need to own even?
Alright, so student will just watch the movie clip for probably 15 minutes because we do have the time limitation, so I just make the movie shorter. But, in a way, students should, after watching the movie clip, they should pair together and do the blank fill-in work together and fill the key terms that they just watch or they just listen to. Okay, so I'll show you some models of them. So this is student work. After watching the movie clip about American prisoner work, it was just fill in the key terms for key ideas. For example, for these students, the dignity or roots of the United States government is trying to use a lot of negotiation with Lakota people. For Aaron Hoy, the white of the Harper verse that we just sing earlier, that for him or for hers, the Aaron Hoy's, the dignity or the roots of the Aaron Hoy's, I am white. Okay, this is a very clear message. And I want to draw your attention to the identity issues being answered here. For the students, the U.S. government's, how the U.S. government deals with the Native Americans use a lot of heavy killing, which means massacres. And for Lakota people, they try to negotiate with the American government, but it turned out to be a failure. And Aaron Hoy is a pity that Aaron Hoy, he's a white American, and he tried to record all the events and cruelty happening. But they still, although those Native Americans told him, I'm talking about it, but for them, he's still a non-Indians. So this is a very clear message for the students, and they will know something about, and they will get a prior knowledge about First Nations. Okay. And then, after doing this smoothly, we'll go into the reading parts of how can you buy or sell a sky in Far Eastern Publisher. In the first 3 paragraphs, the instructor will read out loud to the students. So the student will just take a quick note on the outline that I show you here. After listening, they will just pair together and finalize their answers and make it to the sentence that you see here. And most interestingly is the prediction they will make about the following paragraph about the plot or events that will just be happening. This is an interesting sentence that I pick up here because it's grammatical error, grammatical mistake, and we'll just tell them they do make mistakes. And by so doing, they involve the writing and listening part simultaneously. And they also know something about the prediction part, about the storytelling part. So while reading, the student will also get involved in the following prediction. They will listen to the instructor from paragraph 4 to paragraph 6 again, and they will pair together and take note very quickly on the first draft here. Okay. But after listening, they will just pair together and do some brief discussion with their partners, and they will finalize their answers here. And our focus will be to teach the student to make a distinction between main ideas or details. Oftentimes, they have real difficulty making distinction between main ideas or details. So this is quite helpful for them. I hope so. So this is my partner's doing in Keelung City. My partner is a teacher who teaches in Keelung. So this is the scene. The classroom, the students is discussing and working with their partner. And the students will also do the 4 criteria of work that I mentioned while they read or after they read how can you buy or sell the sky. So they will try to use the same The same for dimensions, to examine how the U.S. government interact with the Chief Seattle tribe, okay, in the 19th century. For example, for the students, she thinks that Chief Seattle, for him, the conflict between the individual and collective identity is cannot understand how smoking pot here, smoking pot which means the train, right? The train could be more important than the kill buffaloes. And so they understand that for Chief Seattle or for indigenous peoples, an animal could be more important than the machine or technological innovations. And for Chief Seattle, for example, the identity is how the Chief Seattle deals with the white Americans. He does consider your offer to buy our land, but you must also teach your children the memory and defend our land. So students know something that the land is not the land itself. It's about the memory and the experiences of the land and the sky. So it cannot be lost, right? So this is the core value of the article. Okay. So our post-reading part about the thinking zone. Our ideal thinking is that students should just read 3 extensive reading articles, but we run short of time. So just drop us, but you do really have time, you can just ask me and I'll give you the extensive reading part about the indigenous people over there. And one of the articles is about CNN 2012 heroes. So this is, the students are working on poster making, poster production. They are working together. So by doing these poster productions, some low achievers would just get some fun because originally they would open those up in like English class, but they can get some. They feel that they do really contribute to the poster production, and they get some fun, right? So, and I would just tell them that your poster will be graded as a group. I want to call your attention to language in this chart here. We can teach our students that they don't need to memorize all the words. Actually, all the words could be divided into 3 areas. And one is subject-specific words, or some words they think is very important and only exists in these lessons, or some words like river or like what. Some words they are familiar with, but sometimes they cannot really use the word or know the right collocation of the words. So, and the triangle part here is the key words they should really know and bear in their mind. So this is their work and their responses. But sometimes they do really make a mistake, right? For example, in this lesson, no is a very important word, but she failed to have it or keep it in this area. So we have to tell them that they do really make a mistake. So after doing the language and analysis chart together, we as an instructor will tell them what the words are supposed to be in which area so that they will know the right answers. And this is another example. This student could not really make a distinction between some important word. For example, ghostly should not be here, right? So, but we just underline the words that we think is more appropriate and more proper that should exist in this area or in this section. And we also ask our students to do some drawing. They love it. This is about vocabulary journal for keywords. For example, if you ask the student to pick out the 5 words together, for example, the tornado, and you should think of the other 4 words together and make a link and make some drawing. So they will just have fun and their impression about the word will be reinforced. So this is the student's work, very cute, in Kingdom City. So the students know something about indigenous people. So she makes, I don't know, she or she draws the chief and followed by his talisman following. So by doing this kind of drilling, the 5 words will be connected together, right? So the students also do some sentence making job, so they will know the right location of the words. And this is my students' work. This words has this flow because the drawing itself didn't show the real issues about First Nation. For the students, this drawing is cute, but they do not really reflect the real core value here. And this is another one. So time is odd. So this is not our pictures. For the students, the picture is cute, but again, she didn't know something about the issues. But at least they could use their mental image to connect all the words. So this is another bonus. And this is the final work about poster production. And the students would do the extensive reading about the Zen people and the Japanese governments, how they interact with each other. For this group, or for this group members, they think that the roots or the dignity of the Japanese government is the sun, or the policeman, right? Or a slave here. For the Zen people, their dignity and roots is rainbow bridge, right? Okay. And how do they deal with each other? They beat it up on a root of sons, and what is the final conclusion? Actually, whether they believe in the sun or whether they believe in the rainbow, they actually believe in the same sky, right? So this is an article at the very end of the past day, right? So they just fill in blank, and this is what they see here. This is another one, poster making, another one. So our potential problem would be students will feel confused about not being taught with many language skills. And they also have some difficulty understanding those 4 dimensions because this is too difficult for them. Also, it's very hard for teachers to find proper extensive reading resources for worksheeters. Okay. And this is our references. This is what I mentioned, Charles Taylor's perspective on language culture issue if you are very interested in. And in English literature, a lot of professors at the English department do some research about Native Americans. So you can find a book compiled by Wan Shili or Huang Xinyang. Okay. This is the students' feedback, but we don't really have time. But we can just play one. It's about vocabulary analysis, language analysis chart. You're shy.
能够比较跟它有关的单词一起记起来，然后就是不会说像之前就是有关没关的，然后一起背啊，就变比较难背了，比较有条理的。
We are not good at English. Okay, so here's my presentation. Thank you. And let's welcome our next speaker. She's a very good speaker. Her name is Alice. Let's welcome her.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Grace. You're doing a wonderful job, which totally and famous. First of all, I would like to say hello to all of you. Hello, Professor Wu. Hello, all my classmates. Recently, I miss you so much. And hello, all of you. Thank you for coming all the way from California in this chilly day. And I do believe you can learn a lot from all my partners. Okay. I believe that some of you may be interested in this sending English teachers abroad for a TESOL learning program. And I strongly recommend all of you to join this program because from my experience, spending 5 weeks in Vancouver in its best season is a wonderful, unforgettable, memorable experience for me. I learned a lot from the lessons in UBC, and most important, I learned a lot from my classmates. There are 19 teachers in Hsinchu County. And here's my overview of this presentation. First of all, I will give you some research background and level researcher review, and then I will propose my research question, and I will explain my student background and my intervention steps, and then teaching activity, and then the following are some feedbacks and the results from students, and I will talk about some limitations and my personal reflection. Okay, so our inspiration of workstation comes from the classroom observation in UBC. We saw a teacher conducting her class in workstation, and all the students there seems to perform so well. And we think maybe we can put this workstation in our teaching environment so that students can enhance their autonomy. So this is our inspiration. In most of the classes in Taiwan, the classroom is usually teacher-centered because both teachers and the student view lectures as an instant and efficient way of learning English in limited class period. Therefore, under the influence of this teaching method, students gradually become passive receiver of knowledge, relying heavily on teachers for information. In addition, they seldom have the opportunities to work with others in groups, and they fail to appreciate cooperative learning. They are so used to working individually, since they have been encouraged to compete with one another during the process of learning. So this is from my personal experience. I don't know if you think in the same way. Yes, thank you. So, however, we think that is the microphone? So can you hear me? Okay. If learners want to be proficient in English, they should go beyond being dependent on someone to feed them knowledge. They have to spend time working on their own, both inside and outside the classroom. So among the ways of facilitating learners' independence, workstations seem to help students learn by themselves and encourage them to take part in learning with group members. Okay, so workstation is a student-centered learning style, and it promotes cooperative learning and independent learning. And the idea of workstation is from Montessori theory. And when words state that Montessori method creates a structured environment that leads children indirectly, instead of giving them direct lesson and instruction by the teacher. And it can be seen as one of the variations of Montessori's educational theory. And here's a definition of workstation. It's an area within the classroom where students work alone or interact with one another, using instructional material to explore and explain their literacy. And by the way, my presentation is not as juicy as hopes, but I promise I will try my best. And here's the features of workstation. First, it fits all level of students, and they use hands-on tasks. Students have to be moving around and doing those tasks, which keep them awake and use their brain. And third, students going to different locations. Teacher needs to take a lot of time doing preparation, but in the real classroom they speak less. So we propose the research question. Will workstation facilitate students' reading ability? Do students of different levels benefit from one another here's my students' background. It's a group of 10th graders, 38 people, and their PR ranges from 65 to 69. So compared to whole student, my student is pretty much some lower achiever in English. And in my classroom, there are 3 students with special needs, and they are highly anxious toward learning English. They think English is terrible. But I believe some of your students are like my student, and their motivation of learning English is low, and they are lack of confidence, especially if they're afraid of speaking and listening. In this workstation action plan, I divide students into 6 groups of 7 to 67, and I assign a group leader for each group. And I have to arrange the classroom layout, and also I give them some handouts and the test